But they ran it too for many years, and I don't know if it was quite as successful as when your grandfather, great-grandfather, and grandmother had it. And when he got out of business, it was the end of sort of the end of a very nostalgic era in Bethlehem. I think they all missed him. And for a short period of time, he ran a little snack bar at the Brit Shalom Community Center. And our kids, when they went to Hebrew school, he always went up to Jake, and he always gave them a little extra portion of ice cream or something, since we were in the mishpacha. So it was nice. Nice. As I said previously, the family moved again from from the top of the furniture store on 217 East 3rd Street to Broadway. And we moved there in about 1920. And I was born in 1921, so I was probably 2 years old when, well, we'll come to that. But anyway, a trolley car used to come down this street. This is Fayette Avenue. It would come down this street, and as you can see, at the end of the street, you had to make either a right or a left, and the trolley made a left there and continued on Broadway to the 5 Points. We lived in, I'm not sure the exact address, but I think it was 720 or 722 Broadway. And we had gone to bed, so it's been told to me. I was only 2, and so I don't remember. It was told to me, and this is a classic story, that when we went to bed, and around midnight, on the last trolley run, it came down this hill, which you can see is a pretty steep hill, and at the end of the street it made a left, and instead of making that left on the tracks, it got off the track and went into our living room. And of course, I assume, since I don't remember, that was quite an event. But anyway, that was enough to scare Mars, Grandpa Mars, that it's time to move, and they weren't going to take a chance of another trolley car coming into our living room. So at that point, we moved up to West 3rd Street. I must say that my memory of living on Broadway obviously is not there because I was too young, but from my older siblings, I heard a lot of stories. They had a lot of fun. They played, I think my 2 brothers probably picked up a lot of their athletic skills there, Nat and Bernie, and we had nice neighbors. In fact, one of our neighbors right to our right were our cousins, and they had a daughter named Sylvia. And since we had a Sylvia too, my sister Sylvia, either she couldn't pronounce Sylvia or somehow the name Zizzy came out, and that was the origin of her nickname Zizzy. From that point on, she was known in the family circle mostly as Zizzy. And I understand it was very pleasant living there. And then we, as I say, we eventually moved to West 3rd Street. Again, the family Americanizing themselves, making another upgrade in their standard of living. And this time it was into a very nice neighborhood, and they were there for many years. Well, the saga of the Morris and Rose Glazier continued. We moved from Broadway after the trolley car incident, and I think they made a nice choice. It was always a very nice neighborhood, and the house was very substantial. We had 6 bedrooms. Of course, there were 8 of us living in the house, including an uncle of mine, Uncle Leon Kaplan, who lived with us for 8 years. So we occupied all the bedrooms, And we always had lots of company. All the relatives that came to the Lehigh Valley always stayed with us. Grandma never found it difficult to put more food on the table she always had more than we needed anyway. And we lived here from 1923 until Grandpa died in 1965. 65, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 65. So I spent most of my unmarried life here in this house, and I have very pleasant memories. It was, as I said, we always had a lot of company, and we enjoyed that. My hobby used to be in the fall that we had 2 chestnut trees in front of the house, and I'd collect chestnuts and usually end up throwing them all away. They weren't edible; they were just chestnuts, you know. But I went to school about 5 blocks from here, and of course I went to Hebrew school. The community center was only about 7 blocks from here, so I walked up and down this street many times. And Grandma Zizzy practically lived most of her life here. She went to Webster School, Madison School, and then Webster School, and then to Brockle. Well, it was called Southside Junior High School then. It became Brockle when I went to school there. And went to Liberty High School. We had a movie theater down the end of this hill here, the Globe Theater. And it was fine, it was nice. And what happened is a lot of the well-to-do families that lived here when we moved here eventually moved to other areas, or some of them died off. And most of these private homes in this area became fraternity houses. And that was interesting, always having young students around. And eventually, Lehigh decided to have all their fraternity houses at the campus, so there were no longer any fraternities, and then they all became apartments. And so we had all these apartment houses around here. Usually that happened more or less by the time I moved out, by the time I had married. And eventually, a lot of the houses on Delaware Avenue now are doctor's offices. So we've seen quite a change in the area. But it was nice living here. Here, and I used to pitch. There's always like a pitcher, you know, the home plate, you know. And I had a basket up against this wall. I used to shoot baskets all the time back here. And right in here, this back porch, we used to build it out, three sections. And they would be in there, you know, it was kept them warm, you know, and they'd, you want me to tell about that? Okay. Well, this is the backyard of West 3rd Street, where I grew up, and I told Scotty about times during the Depression when I would come home for lunch, because we didn't have any cafeterias in schools in those days, and oft times during the Depression I'd come home, and Grandpa Morris had built a little 4-foot enclosure in the back here, which kept the kitchen warm, but it also was a shelter for people who used to come begging for food, because the roundhouse, the railroad roundhouse, was right down here below below Delaware Avenue here, and a lot of these young fellas would be out on the road hitching on the railroads, going from place to place looking for jobs, and we couldn't understand why they always came to our house and they weren't at other neighbors. One day I discovered a chalk mark under our doorbell in the front porch, and we realized that one told the other one by looking for this chalk mark, and they were always sure to get a fried egg sandwich and a cup of coffee. That was our standard fare. And I used to come home and I used to pray that nobody was there when I came home, because it used to make me made me sad to see these people, you know, who didn't have anything to eat, and yet we always had, you know, we weren't scrounging for food, and we always had plenty of food. So it was an experience I'll never forget, and it left an impression on me. Yeah. Well, as you can see, this is now a part of Lehigh campus, this building. But for many, many years, from 1926 on, it was the Brith Shalom Jewish Community Center, which at that time was a very novel situation. It was not only a community center, but it was a synagogue. So it was a center synagogue, which was a very new innovation at that time in the conservative movement, which we were part of. Anyway, I personally spent, this was like a home away from home. I spent most of my days and hours up here. I went to elementary school about 2 blocks from here, and if we pan over to the left, we'll see that there's a bigger building, and this was the junior high school. So for the first 9 years of my life, I was within 2 blocks of the community center, where I went to Hebrew school, Sunday school, played basketball, belonged to organizations, and so forth and so on. That applies also to my siblings. They spent a lot of time up here. Probably not quite as much as I did, because I was a little younger, and I just seemed to my age level of age at the time was just appropriate for all the activities that were going on there. But anyway, this was a great place. We had a gym, we had an auditorium, we had a swimming pool. I learned how to swim here, and we just had the synagogue and a chapel and just about everything you can imagine. It was a great growing up here. Across the street was the junior high school, where all my siblings attended at one time or other. 3 of them attended there during their junior high school years. That's Nat, Bernie, and Zizzy. And Mildred attended here not only in junior high but high school, because Liberty was being built at the time, and she finally graduated from Liberty, although she spent some time here. It's interesting to note that when I should have known better, I had just gotten out of the service, and I had just opened my I had begun practice with another dentist at the time, and I was playing touch football on the porch. There was a big porch here, right at the area where you see the Harold S. Moeller Laboratory. There was a big open porch there, and I was reaching for a pass from one of the kids, and I was about 26, 27 already at the time. I lost my balance and went over the porch and landed on my left wrist and broke my wrist, both bones there, and I ended up in a cast. This was 3 weeks after I began my dental practice. So it was sort of a it's sort of a joke now. It's sort of a folk tale, but and people snicker when they think about it. But it wasn't so funny at the time. But anyway, I might mention that Grandpa Mars was one of the original members of the Board of Trustees here. He was a perennial treasurer of the Jewish UJA fund, and he was treasurer of the synagogue, and he was religious chairman, and he was a very ardent member of the congregation. Grandpa Jake Thomas was also a fine member of the synagogue, an active member, came to Minions regularly when he was no longer active in his business, but he also ran the snack bar here. So the kids, when they came to Hebrew school, looked forward to having some candy or some pretzels or whatever, soda, and Jake Thomas was always accommodating, and I know my kids always used to love to go in there, and Jake, of course, was always nice to them, knowing we were part of the mishpacha, and it was fun. Let's see. I think eventually we're going to go up the hill a bit and show you where the original groundbreaking occurred in 1924. The building was actually occupied in 1926.